The act of collecting data and analyzing and getting to knowledge itself is the scientific reductionist approach. So maybe we don't need to collect data the way we've done it. Maybe the data is already there. We just need to feel it through our wisdom. I believe we all can just tap into that wisdom, actually. That's my belief. Not that I can do it all the time, but I believe innately we can. And sometimes we're just too blinded by all the data, analysis, and information making through this sort of scientific, analytical approach that we praise so much of. So there's a kind of a balance that. So the point would be, what is data? What are we not listening to, perhaps? Maybe something like that.
So a very practical response. We struggled with this, as you would well imagine. And the answer is stories. Stories.
Stories.
That's how you go beyond the data to get to the wisdom. And we have something that Ora knows well also called narrative policy analysis. So we teach narrative policy analysis to complement the cost-benefit analysis. Because if we did only stories, we will lose the mainstream policymaker right now. So we do the traditional cost-benefit analysis, but we bring stories in. The big task ahead of us is, how do we persuade existing policymakers of the power of stories in the public policy process? And we are working on that now. The related issue is, how to begin to integrate qualitative and quantitative. So now the methodology is advancing rapidly in the mixed methods area, and that kind of methodology is being taught to all our students. They all now do not either qualitative or quantitative, but mixed methods wherever it's relevant and necessary. So we begin to do that. The final thing is, what do we reward? And if we continue to reward this traditional evidence-based policy only on data, we'll get it wrong. So we are trying to persuade policymakers that incentives should be given for people who can deal with narrative policy analysis. You see, in fact, I am now persuaded, after years of being trained as a natural scientist, you might not believe that I was trained as a natural scientist. But, I am convinced that it is these stories that can really describe systems. Quantitative data is hopeless at dealing with systems. True complex systems have to be described by stories. And complexity, we were born as humans to deal with complexity. Otherwise, we would not have survived in the forest while we were evolving in the jungles. But we used stories at that time. And now we call it all kinds of strange names like behavioral economics and behavioral sciences and so on. So those stories, I think, is the answer.
So maybe I can add, since your answer is very concrete. The concrete tool that we use is personas, borrowed from the design thinking field. For example, now I'm in charge of doing the research to write the 5-year strategic plan to reduce PM 2.5 in Chiang Mai for the province. So right now we produce 50 personas of people who are using fire or who are affected by the smog. And we're opening the participatory process for people to come up with personas that people they know or of themselves that's missing in this whole. So a collection of stories of individuals so that we could feel how this problem is, and then therefore the way out that would be fair to all. So it's part of our climate justice approach as well. So specific tools, and I agree, the stories, the qualitative aspect. And without preparing in advance, the Jindal School and the Chiang Mai School of Public Policy is very similar, taking this track. We, as a compulsory course, also have the narrative policy analysis. And we produce students who would be mixed research method researchers. And we're following the Jindal School for the first time this semester to have a course on awakening and climate change. So having people to start with the awakening process of themselves before they go into the technical stuff of climate change, for example.